Hey, guys and girls, happy Sunday. I apologize that I have been away for quite some time. Today's show, I'm incredibly excited, is pushing this production to the max. I do apologize for sometimes some probably a little few technical stuff that's going on. I'm not using my big computer because the big computer doesn't like me today. So we're using the little computer. But anyways, so I mean, it's no surprise everything that's kind of going on right now out in the world with the Black Lives Matters movement and COVID-19 still kind of like on the heels of that, and some predictions of possibly things getting worse and coming back. We still life goes on. So today's topic is surrounding that. There's so many issues and so many problems that I'm not gonna lie to you. I was like, is the world like really truly turned upside down on its axis? I know that in the past episodes I've said that, but I think if astronauts or like if aliens landed on Earth right now, I wouldn't be quite surprised. So anyway, subscribe to my channel, check out the promo, and then I'll come back with my guests. All right. So, as you all will see, I am joined here by friends online. Today we have Dr. Kenneth Mitchell online, who's joining us, Mr. Jacques ATN. We also have Dr. Ernest Grant, who is joining us, and we also have Mr. Cyril Josh Barker. So, I am incredibly excited that you guys are taking out your Sunday because, again, with all that's left to do, it's
Yeah.
amazing that that I think any of us are able to sometimes sit down. So what I would like to do is start with Dr. Ernest Grant. Would you please introduce yourself and tell people about what it is that you do?
Um, Dr. Willis, happy to be here. I'm the president of the American Nurses Association, which represents the nation's 4.3 million registered nurses.
Yes, which is a tall job, by the way, sir. So,
Yes, it is, especially right now.
right, especially right now. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't tell you enough how much this means for you to be here. We'll move on to Mr. Jacques ATN, our community activist in Atlanta, which we know is a very hot spot right now.
Yes, my name is Jacques Etienne. I am an educator. I've been in education for 7 years. I'm also passionate about social justice and um, building stronger communities. And I'm currently working on my second master's in industrial organizational psychology. So
Thank you, thank
that's
you,
my
thank you.
lens.
Yes, and you are educating our youth in predominantly minority-based educations or school centers, right?
Yes, yes,
So
I teach.
so share that. That's big. That's huge.
Yes.
That is very huge. And Dr. Kenneth Mitchell.
Good evening, gentlemen. I am Kenneth Mitchell. I'm a life coach in private practice. I am also responsible for serving as the executive director and project director for TRIO programs at the Renaissance Education Group. So, a little education, a little training, a lot of community worker like roles in terms of those things that impact our communities. Yeah, honored and feel good to be here with you guys today.
Thank you. And you did say author, correct?
And author,
Right.
yes,
You promote
author
that.
times one and a half.
Right.
uh,
You definitely promote
Renaissance
that
Way
because I
coming
think
out. Huh?
putting our lives in books and putting our stories in books
Right, right.
is
So I'm working
tremendous.
on my second piece. It's called the Judas Moment, coming out this summer, dealing with betrayal in our lived experience and how we overcome that experience.
Right. Awesome. And last but purely surely not least, one of the a person that I've probably known the longest on
Yes.
here is Mr. Cyril Josh Barker. I knew him when he was a young man in
Yeah.
as a freshman at Alabama State University. So
Yes, yes. We've known each
and
other a while.
exactly. And now moved on to being a big time you introduce yourself.
Certainly, no problem. So I'm Cyril Josh Parker. I am a reporter and online editor for the New York Amsterdam News here in New York City. It is the largest and oldest African American newspaper in the city and one of the oldest in the country. And I'm also a co host on 107.5 FM WBLS. I co host a show that actually aired this morning. So those are my two things that I do.
Right. Well, thank you. Well, you gentlemen really truly represent the diversity that I feel is so necessary in this conversation. Because as I was sitting down thinking about this, I was like, wow, there's so many players and there are so many possible people that need to be present. And I was like, well, who's seated at the table that can
Mm.
provide the conversations, right? And so I would like to start with Dr. Ernest Grant, and Dr. Grant, take the time if you, as much as you need to basically express kind of like how sitting at the table is, whether it be sometimes in a very formal sense or informal sense, being again we're all black men, which is just very real. I was thinking about kind of like the lived experiences. I don't know if not one black man that has not been affected by what we're fighting about. So I would love to hear from you, Dr. Ernest Grant, about kind of like what you feel like is the role or your role is, in leading this charge.
Well, thank you, Wesley, for the opportunity to express that. Um, the way that that I look at my role is obviously as the leader of 4.3 million registered nurses. You have to think that or try to put yourself in the place of everyone across the country, because we all are going to experience racism in some form or another, no matter what
Mm.
color you may be. And I put out a statement last week to the nurses in America, and part of it was that I attributed to the Nurses Code of Ethics, which I stated it obligates us as nurses to be allies and also to advocate and speak up against when we see racism or discrimination or injustice. And I stress that that's non-negotiable. I mean, um, you go into nursing um, representing and wanting to to treat every person as human and with human dignity and with respect. That's the bare minimum, and then it grows from there. Being in my position, and being at the table, one of the things that I stress to to those in the powers that be, and I put quotes around that, is the need to listen to what is being said, and to try to understand. I know there's no way that they're going to be able to walk in my shoes, like there's no way that I can walk in the shoes of the other members of the panel. We all have experienced racism or discrimination or injustice in different forms, but we all have experienced it, and I think for each of us to be able to tell our story, we begin to get a very good rounded picture of what is going on there. But what I have charged nurses to do is to educate themselves first of all, and then take that experience and go and educate the public as a result of that. And if I may just get one other thought in, the only way that we can really expect and to have change is not only through education, but it's through the power of the vote. And so one of the things that we really need to be able to do is to try to get people to register to vote, and not only to register to vote, but to actually do, the voting process, because that's what's going to drive change in order to really have your voice heard.
I couldn't agree. I could not agree with you more. And Josh, you are basically responsible for influencing thousands and hundreds
Hmm.
of thousands of readers, because I love the Amsterdam News. I think it's
Thank
one
you.
of the purest places that I get what's truly going on for Black and brown people, people who look like me, whether I live in the community, physically live in the community, or not. But it is definitely one of those beacons that I've loved since I moved to New York City 18 years ago, and look to in terms of getting my information from. What are you doing in leading the charge to, I guess, educate people, update people? How does it feel to even be there?
Yeah, well, I've actually been working in the black press for I've been at the Amsterdam News for 13 years, been affiliated for 15. I did work in mainstream for a little while, and there is a big difference being black in a mainstream media newsroom and being black in a black newsroom and being able to
Mm,
tell our truth and
wow.
tell our story. And luckily, I work at a very long standing uh, treasured historical newspaper. Our paper was founded in 1909, so we've been there on the front lines, since the beginning of the century. And so I feel so fortunate to be there. Um, Doing this work, you come to the realization, you learn a lot of history when you work at a black newspaper. And the fact of the matter is that for the last 400 years, every generation of African Americans who have been in this country have had to do something to try and better ourselves or better our treatment, I should say. Everybody has had to do it, from slavery to Jim Crow to now. Every generation has had to do something and be an activist in some way to better our to promote and see that we get better treatment. And so what my job is to kind of document everything that happens and how people are doing that and let them know what really is going on. I get a lot of questions from people asking me about why things are so different now. Why people, the number one question I get from a lot of people is, why am I seeing such a diverse number of people at these rallies and so active? And that's because that more people are starting to realize that there really is a clear problem in this country when it comes to the treatment of African Americans, especially our men. Everybody, but the men are what we're seeing. George Floyd and Eric Garner are what we're seeing. And so, um, one of the things that I've been able to do at the Amsterdam News is write our story unapologetically, not use code words. I can, say what pretty much I'd like about what I think is going on with our community and how people are treating us without offending anybody, because our readership are the people who are being impacted by it. And so I'm so fortunate to be working there at the Amsterdam News, and what a time to be a journalist. Let me just tell you guys,
Right.
before I even came on to this meeting event, I was out in the streets. They were protesting here in the Bronx, and saying Black Lives Matter that we're going to be discussing today, and pounding the pavement in our community. And everybody out there, there were all types of people, young, old, black, white, Latino. Everybody was out there, and the fight is on now, and people now want to, and the people are asking themselves now, what side of history do I want to be on?
Mm.
And the decision is being made at a quick instance. Do you want to be on the wrong side or the right side? Do you remembered as this time as the person who stood on the sidelines? Do you want to be remembered as the person who made change when it happens? And so, and that's just my story right there about what I've experienced during this whole thing.
Wow. Wow. And Dr. Mitchell, I'll punt the ball to you.
Okay. Um, my world is kind of split between a couple of different duties, but still in the same space, and that is in the area of education. I think one of the most difficult spaces has been to provide some degree of stability for students in the K through 12 environment, and then to talk about what are we doing in terms of preparing this next generation of college students that'll be starting school in the fall, and that specifically aligning with my work in Trio. I think back to the beginning of the year, and I remember everyone saying, it's 2020, I got crystal clear vision, and blah, 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 blah. And I think the thing about where we find ourselves in this space is that we have to be careful what we speak. Because, of course, the quarantine has provided us with this opportunity to really examine what's working and what's not, what we're ready to handle and what we can't. And I think what has added the layer of complexity is it has provided us with an opportunity to see clearly how we fit in the world and how we don't fit. I think my biggest challenge in some of the training workshops, it's difficult not to be on the road training because I do like that piece of my job. But we converted everything immediately to remote learning, and so all the training converted uh, to the remote space. But what we found is that you can't move this whole socialization space because that's what education provides. It's not just about what you learn in the classroom and on the blackboard, but it's also how we develop this culture about becoming an adult and becoming an informed citizen, and how in moving all of that to online mediums, have not always considered what impact this is going to have on kids. And so I've had more conversations with both educators and with parents about students and how they are responding. They just got to do their packet, or they just need to go online and do XYZ. But what we have to remember, school is the only space that provides some sense of normalcy, irrespective to where you fall on the socioeconomic level. Like you can go to school and you ain't poor, right? When you're in college, that you're not, you don't have to be, right?
Right.
But all of a sudden, you're on these Zoom calls, and the background and my backdrop is showing what I have and what I don't have, and we see this space where students are feeling uncomfortable, where even in the college prep piece, um, students don't necessarily feel as whole in terms of their interaction in the classroom. And we as educators have had a hard time. I am zoomed out in terms of doing workshops with kids and certainly with adults in terms of, hey, let's just do a Zoom. And it's like, but I'm an extrovert, right? And that classroom space, what does it feel like to be in the house when you really want to see students and be with practitioners and doing that work? And what is it like when you are having a dialogue with a cohort of seniors or high school students, and you see someone that you don't look right, right? But it's hard to drill down into what's bothering you, whether it's quarantine, or I'm scared, or I'm stressed, or I still don't understand what's going on in class, or the people are protesting. And what does that mean when the classroom space, which used to be where you could ask anything and be who you are, now
Mm-hmm.
doesn't exist? And
Mm-hmm.
so I tell parents that I've had this conversation with, have you really explained everything about what's going on? Because our young people are not connected to the one thing that was congregational for them. And that feels as out of whack for them as it feels for us. When we add the layer of complexity with what's going on in communities right now, and what's going on in terms of um, policing and race, and these other conversations, these are things that at some point we've got to be able to say there's a whole nother generation of college students that we're sending away in the fall that still will not have the same degree of closure or feeling good about who they are in the new space that they will inhabit starting in August. We've got to make sure that we're providing that type of foundation for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a great segue, actually, and punt to you, Jock. By the way, being, being on the, in some ways now, the new front lines of what this is about, being a community, not just being a community activist, but also being an educator for not, for high school students.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think what is most interesting about this is I recently was watching something on YouTube, and they broke down what it means to, like, the actual word educate, like educator, and like breaking it down piece by piece. It's our job to really lead people out of ignorance. So being an educator within itself is activism if you're doing it the right way. So thinking about that, I'm thinking about the zeitgeist of this time right now. Like, there's just such an energy for change, and this is such an amazing thing to be able to um, allow students to talk about, because things are changing, and it's shocking
Yeah.
even me. Even just watching how quick companies work to say Black Lives Matter, it's almost like um, it's quickly becoming, the movement is quickly becoming commercialized, and it's like,
Mm.
wow, like this is a very interesting time that we're living in, because if 4 years ago, if you couldn't even say Black Lives Matter because it was so controversial, but now all of a sudden Apple Music could decide for Blackout Tuesday that we're going to, you can only stream black music.
Mm.
So wow,
Right.
like we're in a very, very interesting time, and this is
Right.
like this is history happening right now in this moment. So I can't wait to have conversations with my students in the fall and really drive home that, you know, we're getting to a point in time where what was once acceptable is can no longer be acceptable.
Mm.
That you don't that that's great because it segues into what I have been really struggling, not really struggling through, but just kind of working through, is that we have had these points where this is nothing new. Let's just be honest. We've known about systematic racism and injustices and inequality, and we rally around these events so we rally around these events, these really tragic events that happen to black and brown people and to people who look like us. And then we kind of it kind of dies down. And I'd love to hear from you, Dr. Grant, actually kind of being one of those leaders on the front of frontline heroes, as we call us, from COVID-19, and then now actually I know even several nurses that have been on the front lines of this and nursing patients who are being struck with rubber bullets, who are being trampled with tear gas and different things of that nature. I know that must be incredible experience for you in terms of trying to figure out how do you lead those folks. Like, what do you think, being a leader in that in with those people, with frontliners, like myself, is the next step?
Well, I think well, the let me start over. The photos and videos that I've seen of healthcare workers, particularly in New York, after finishing a long night shift, third shift, taking care of COVID patients, and now coming outside to either participate in a protest or to render, health assistance to the people who may have been protesting or marching. It's a sign of just who we are. I mean, as nurses, we're very resilient. We seek for the best in everyone, and we're taught to again, as part of our code of ethics, is to help in any way that we can. I think for this coming on top of the COVID-19, yeah, it has exacerbated the crisis, and it's added a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stress in the black and brown community, and part of again, nurses wanting to be out there is to promote health, and when you are trying to do that, but then you're interrupted or not allowed to do that. Or I've seen cases where I'm here in North Carolina, and cases where nurses had set up a first aid tent for for
Mm-hmm.
people,
Mm-hmm.
and to have that come along and be destroyed because the bottled water could be used as a weapon, or things of this sort, that that goes against everything that you essentially went into nursing for, which is to render aid and assistance. And um, you know it, I really just can't fathom really a true answer for that, other than obviously uh, educating the officials that we are here to render assistance to both sides. It isn't an us or them or them against us. It doesn't matter, who you are. If you are in need of help, that's what we're there for. We
Mm-hmm.
don't see color. We don't see, sides or whatever. Granted, yes, we know that we have to decide upon which side of history we want to be on.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
when you see your fellow human being who is injured or is hurt, you're going to render assistance one way or the other. But I think they're showing their solidarity and their unity with the protesters by offering to go out there and to offer first aid. And I think that sends a very powerful message of who we are and what it is that we as nurses do.
Right, right. Being and what you just said, Dr. Grant, resonates so deeply with me. I remember, so I'm struggling through the nurse's name. I think it may be Nurse Dodd, who was arrested for by a police officer because she refused to go against a patient's wishes, who was unable to consent to draw his blood, draw the
Mm-hmm.
patient's blood, and she was arrested, and she was kind of in most ways brutalized for just
Yeah.
doing her job. And I
Mm-hmm.
think about, again, we talk about police brutality, and just
Mm-hmm.
I guess a moment of a clarity for myself. I always figured I'd marry a nurse or a police officer, because I
Mm-hmm.
thought that we had the same, not just
Yeah.
same kind of stressful work schedules, but
Mm-hmm.
because our goal as people, as a profession, resonates with like helping your community and looking
Mm-hmm.
past all of those things. Like as a nurse, I can't say that I don't see, but one of the things I can't treat a individual who comes in and they have a different belief than I do. I don't get that choice,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of treat them differently. And I always thought that way about police officers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So then to
Mm.
now come up on like where it's not just sometimes guys in blue, like the incident that happened in Buffalo with the older gentleman being pushed down on camera and being said that that he tripped and that they didn't even
Mm-hmm.
help the gentleman. So how do people, Jacques, I guess, in similar situations as I am, like a teenager, educated, a person who's growing up, kind of like, how do you help them try to manage that in a very real way, that it's not like, oh, these are bad, policemen, or that all policemen aren't bad?
I think what we're coming to realize is like this whole scenario, like this whole idea of this black bad apple situation. This That's a myth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad apple, it's a bad system.
Mm,
So I think what happens is you get a lot of good people who may be well intentioned in becoming police officers, but the system is so corrupt that they could knock a 75-year-old man down and he's bleeding and they walk past him to go make that arrest. So that's how toxic the system is. And then on top of that, those those two officers were um, taken into custody for pushing that man down. And
mhm,
upon their release, their fellow police officers were outside cheering them as they were coming out. So right there, you can see that there is a systemic problem with policing where they really believe that the police officer is always right. And it's such
Mm-hmm.
a dangerous thing. Like the most dangerous thing you can do in America is try to challenge a police officer. You can lose your, especially if you're black and brown, you can lose your life behind that. You cannot embarrass or put down a police officer. You can lose your life. We're dealing with fragile egos, lots of toxic masculinity, and it's
mm,
pervasive
mm,
in their culture. And even if you are a black man or even if you are a woman, you still are part of this system, and you have to go along if you want to be successful. So I'm interested to see what reform is going to look like, and I'm glad that especially white America is being able to see that they don't care who you are. They will knock grandpa down. Um, that's how toxic the system is.
Mm, mm.
Hmm.
Wha-
Hmm.
Right. Wow. Yes. So, Kenneth, I'm punting this to you because you are also an educator, and this is a challenging question, Coach. Go, Coach.
Yeah, yeah. And I was actually listening to Jock, and I'm wrestling with some things because and I wrestle not just with just to piggyback off of what he said about people seeing it and having a response in terms of what that lived experience has been. But I think I wrestle with the lack of compassion that I see even in some responses about how Black people are treated. And I see that not just from a callousness, almost like, here you guys go again, right?
Mm.
I think I felt some degree of excitement when I saw the protest that they had in Jefferson City, Missouri. That's where my alma mater is.
Today,
I
right?
used to always say that, huh?
It was today, right? I think.
No, it was last week. It was
Oh,
last
last
week,
week.
last
Okay.
Wednesday, I believe, at Lincoln University. But I was amazed to see and excited to see both black and white citizens, black and white students of the Jefferson City come together in this response, right? But again, I keep going back to other things that I see where there's almost this, well, here y'all go again, as if, you know, when we have the conversation about Black Lives Matter, do we really believe that every Black life matters? Because I don't want to get into the Black life versus all life piece, but I will say that I believe that we prioritize pain,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we kind of segment who is worthy and who isn't. And so I've seen some of those things kind of surface in social media, seen some of those conversations kind of take place. But I think at a certain point, I'm excited to see the sheer numbers, Jock, as you said, of people coming together and non-black people, not people that are not people of color, to participate in or respond to what they see in terms of a lived experience, and what it has been like to, as one of the young men that I was coaching said, to drive down the street and see flashing lights behind you, and he was 22 years old. And he said, and you think even as a college student, is this the day that I die? And I found that to be
Hmm.
piercing because
Mm.
I said, like, we got a whole other generation of black men that are going out into the world with this. But when you see the flashing lights, is this the day that we become so numb to it? And some of the responses are so oblivious to it, as if here it is again. I think the reform needs to have some teeth to it. I think it needs to be tangible.
Mm.
I think one of the things that needs to happen, one of my former professors said at that rally, he said, but who are you? What is your agenda? And this was an open call to the students that were saying Black Lives Matter. What is your agenda, and who is your leader?
Mm.
And
I feel like
so, because as we shape what needs to happen, right? And I'm not I'm just saying, at a certain point, we've got to be pushing either a piece of legislation, a piece of something that's concrete enough, a standard change that's systemic to the system that we know does not work well.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to be something meaningful and tangent.
Mm. Now,
But if you
Tangible.
go
I'm sorry.
through, but
go
if you
go
go
shot.
to the Black Lives Matter website, the
Yeah.
platform has been there. It's there, and I think what we're seeing now is we are seeing um, whatever they have put in place is working
Mm-hmm.
because we've gotten to the
Yes.
point where um, us Black people we've shamed our white friends enough that they are finally coming to our aid. That's
Yeah.
why we were able to have protests in. I think one day they said that there was protests in all 50 states. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if they were red
Yes.
states, blue states. We've shamed people enough that we're forcing them to put their money where their mouth is to pull up to these protests. And I think this idea of like who is our leader, I think it's there are multiple leaders multiple people
Yes.
who are activists, and we have a clear platform. But you have to
Yeah.
take your time to research it. But the thing is, we're also dealing with so many different local governments, right? When it comes to
Yeah.
policing, so it's in terms of like what reforms are going to be needed. I guess it's going to have to be a case by case. But we've already seen like a
Yeah.
lot of police departments have already said chokeholds banned. And
Mhm.
if you don't speak up while you see your fellow, if you're a police officer, you don't speak up while another officer is hurting somebody, you are just as culpable. So certain things are happening little by
Right.
little.
But that's interesting, Jacques, that you bring that up, and I want to pose that this part of this question also, with other than what I just spoke about, is with uh, Josh is Cyril.
Hmm.
I don't know, Josh. I'm so used
You
to
can call
calling
me
you
Josh.
Josh.
That's
By the
fine.
way, my sister says my. By the way, my sister, you're cool. My sister and Josh were classmates at Alabama State University, and they graduated
Yeah.
together. She says, "Way to go, Mr. Barker." But
Oh, thank you.
so years ago, we came up with this idea that body cams were required, cop
Hmm.
cams were required.
Hmm.
So is that truly still part of the reform and resolution that we need? And what is it doing, if anything, for today, right now, Josh, that you think, and what you've
Well,
been
that's
covering?
body cams are one part of a long-standing problem that serves one solution, one of several solutions that we need. Because body cams always don't work, and for some reason, sometimes
Hmm.
body cams get shut off. So that's just
Right,
another thing
as we've
that's
seen.
we've heard that
Right.
plenty of
Yes.
times from police departments. But
Right.
I think that those are small solutions that can help. But the fact of the matter is that there's a segment of the population in this world, in this country, that are being treated differently by police than others, and people are just now starting to recognize it or become wise to it. And
Yeah.
that's why one of the reasons why we're seeing such diverse numbers at these rallies and these protests. When white folks saw George
Hmm.
Floyd, the knee of that white police officer on that black man's neck, they said, "Wait a minute, that's not
Mm,
supposed to be happening." It's
mm,
interesting. They kind of respond differently to blatant racism than subliminal racism that happens every day that some of them do themselves. And
Hmm.
so it's interesting that people I see all these things. I appreciate all the things that I'm seeing with white folks apologizing to black folks and white folks rallying around us. But what are you going to do that day when something happens with a black person? Are you going to blurt out the wrong word?
mm-hmm,
Are you going to act
Hmm.
differently from now on if a black man, if you're putting your groceries in your car at night at Walmart, and a black man is walking behind you minding his own business, are you going to hurry it up a little further? Or are you just going to be cool about it? And
mm,
so
Yeah.
that I'm just saying, I appreciate, I tell people all the time I appreciate it, but at the same time, what do it's a case by case situation.
mm-hmm,
One of the things I will say about Black Lives Matter, Jock was mentioning a lot of the corporations, a lot of the politicians are saying that we just saw this big, beautiful Black Lives Matter art piece, words in D.C. You can see it from space on the streets of Washington
right.
D.C. While I appreciate Mayor Muriel Bowser doing that, and other mayors saying Black Lives Matter, all these companies saying Black Lives Matter, the question that needs to be answered is what is being done behind closed doors to change policy?
Mm,
What is being done
Exactly.
behind closed doors
Exactly.
to
Hmm.
ensure that people are getting their fair treatment by the police?
Hmm.
What is being done behind closed doors to ensure that the black community is getting its equal fair share when it comes to health care and services and social services in our cities and in our neighborhoods? And those are the questions that need to be answered. Now, when it comes to police, one of the things I will say that I am glad to see, in fact, I'm actually going to be doing a story about it this week, hopefully, is we're seeing a lot more officers be disciplined. Wesley, you just mentioned the situation in Buffalo. Those cops, they got suspended. We saw 6 police officers who yanked out 2 of our HBCU brothers and sisters, one from Spelman, one from Morehouse, who got yanked out of their vehicle for no reason. 6 officers fired. We saw this police officer that put his knee on George Floyd's neck fired the day of. That's something I've never seen before. I'll be honest with you about
mm-hmm,
that.
Hmm.
mm-hmm,
Right.
However, what's being done about the officers that are still out there who have that mentality and bring those racial overtones with them when they're working, because that's what a lot of our white police officers are doing. They are taking those stereotypes, those notions that they have about us, what they think about us, and incorporating that into their jobs, unfortunately.
mm-hmm,
And that's what's being dead. But that's what's killing us. That is
mm,
what's killing us.
Hmm.
right.
Is
Hmm.
those they're not from our neighborhoods, and they're coming
Hmm.
with these. Well,
Right.
I'm here today, working in this black neighborhood. I need to
Hmm.
do X, Y, Z,
Right.
and they're coming with those
Right.
notions, and that's what's killing us. So at the end of the day, we need to be really, I hope that what comes out of this is that there are still police officers that would probably and might do the same thing that this white officer did to George Floyd, and we need to identify those officers
Hmm.
and figure out who
Hmm.
they are so that this doesn't happen again.
Mm. Interesting
Yeah.
comment that I
What's
have from Manjeet on LinkedIn is, haven't we all formed in the aren't we all informed in the image of God? It's time to rethink humanity beyond creed, color, and caste, especially in the healthcare sectors. Because he's a nurse, we simply can't allow anything to cloud our judgment on how we serve our patients. We are global healthcare
Yeah.
heroes. We lead by example, and leading by example is what I thought that all of us as service members were doing. Again, like we said,
Mhm.
nurses and police
what's
officers,
mhm.
and the like. So that's interesting that
what's
we recognize that we're supposed to be better than, but
mhm.
what
Yeah.
how do we hold these people to be better than, is my question for you, Dr.
what's
Grant.
Thank you. I was just jumping at the to sort of answer along with Cyril's question or comment. I think we've got to hold ourselves and our leaders accountable or accountable to committing to reforms and action. It's a two-way street, and we've got to be holding to the fact that when a complaint is made, we need to there need to be something in place to ensure that that complaint is taken seriously. It isn't just swept under the rug or is you know ignored like it has been in the past. And I think this is something that as we begin to see the police being perhaps under the scrutiny of maybe a public review board or something like that, that will begin to notice some change. To answer
Yeah.
the question of the caller or the person who posted there, yes, I think that we are. It is essential that we just we don't see color. We shouldn't see color. We should treat everyone equally the way we want to. The problem comes in is that either life experiences or depending on who your parents were or who and what they have experienced as they were growing up, or within their culture, we don't associate with those people or things like that. It becomes embedded into us. I'm sure we've often have heard it said that a baby is not born with prejudice. This is something that
Yeah.
is learned. So we've got to start with the young people that are out there, who, by the way, have uh, begun this change because back when I was growing up, I mean, I was when I was young and we first integrated to schools, it was it was a trying time. But you look at the
Hmm.
millennials and the Gen Xers and the group that is there now. They have grown up not seeing color essentially, and they have gone to suddenly are beginning to recognize that this person that I've gone to school with all my life, who I have always viewed as not seeing color, but as my friend or whatever else. I don't like the fact that they are being discriminated against or that there's blatant racism. And so, for the most part, this is why we're seeing such a huge change with the young people that are out there marching. And I applaud that because it's they have they begin to see and to sow the seeds of a different society, that what we'd like to
Yeah.
see happen. But it's a matter of all of us just really uh, you know identifying what it is that we need, what we want, and how are we going to get there, and how we're going to hold people accountable. And again, it goes to what I stated earlier: being able to vote at the box, but you want to be educated about who you're voting for. What do they
Hmm. Hmm.
identify
Hmm.
with you, or do they have, or with your ideas, or do they have a proven record of being progressive and not showing acts of discrimination and things of that sort. It's almost like I know I'm rambling on, but
No,
I
no,
just
not
had
at
a
all.
thought too that it's almost just like after um, you know uh, 1865 when the Civil War was over and all these laws were put in place that were supposedly designed to to make Black Americans put them on an equal footing, if you will. But then suddenly somebody decided, oh, we don't like that, so we're going to put laws and things in place that will
Right.
make it a little bit difficult. And then the laws got more and more stringent and more and more stringent.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if we begin to experience this now, we need to make sure that laws, if laws are passed, if that's what it takes to, to bring
Yes.
about reform and change, they've got to be airtight. There's no way that, so that either put them in as part of the, another amendment to the Constitution or something that would, so that, there's a lot of grit and teeth that's going to hold these laws in place,
Hmm.
and not 25 years from now we're going to see a dismantling of that.
Something you
Exactly.
said, Dr. Grant, and I want to kind of like pivot with you utilizing that is that the comment about that today's generation are being raised to recognize and hold their classmates accountable. But so I remember growing up, and my mother who's watching today, and she's commenting out of control. Um, being told before I went away to Alabama State University, which is a historically black college and university, being made very clear that between Montgomery and Tuskegee, you don't you look down, you say yes sir, you say no sir, you do what you're told, and you move on. Dr.
Mhm.
T. Clifford Bibb, and I love Dr. T. Clifford Bibb because he kept it very real. Um, he was he kept it very real. You do not speak back, you do not speak up, and I'm like, but that's goes against everything you're teaching in humanities through the African American experience, which was the class that he
Mhm.
taught. But are those messages still important to be taught, Jacques? Because I want to throw it to my millennials first.
Mhm.
Um, so first, I wanted to say, like, I hear a lot of idealism in like these conversations of like not seeing color, or how can we make sure that as people who are, whether we're teachers or nurses, that we treat everybody equally and the same. I'm gonna say that I am firmly against this idealism of like not seeing color. Color is present. Like, your experience as a person of color is something that you carry with you everywhere you go, and it's not even though the system is bad. It's 400 years in the making, and just by saying you don't see color, you cannot dismantle it or take yourself out of the system. I think it is important to teach kids about who they are. I think one of the reasons why police have so much issues with Black people is that they do not understand the complexities of being Black.
Mm,
Like, like I don't know if you guys have ever played the game Black Card Revoked, but
mm,
when you play that
No,
game,
I
you
haven't.
see all the intricacies of being Black.
mm,
If you're in the car with your Black mother and you want to get McDonald's, what is your mother gonna say?
You got McDonald's
W-
money.
Exactly, exactly,
That's what my
exactly.
mom
So
used to say.
we have such a rich culture and personality that if you do not take the time to understand it, if you do not have the cultural awareness, then you are always going to find yourself wanting to be aggressive with Black people. And where, you know what I mean? But so
mm,
I'm just saying, like, we have to really have really we need to make sure that cultural competency is a part of all of these careers. We
mm,
really have to understand who we're dealing with. And I think it starts by, like, me as a teacher, I make sure that I just listen to my students and understand where they're coming from, and um, understand who their parents are. With my school, the majority of my students come from one housing project. So understanding how the living conditions are there, that will influence everything that happens in my classroom.
Mm, mm. Josh,
Hmm.
Yes.
same question to you. Do those messages, and you know, we both went to Alabama State University, so
Yeah, we
I don't
did.
know if that
Yeah.
kind of will probably definitely influence your response
Hmm.
about the teaching. I don't know if you took Dr. T. Clifford Bibb, who taught humanities through
I
the
knew
African
who he
American
was, but
experience.
I didn't have him. But I know who you're talking about.
Exactly. So he was very clear that you don't question, you don't fight. The goal at the end of the day is to make it to Tuskegee or make it back to Alabama State University or to make it home.
Hmm.
You say yes sir, you say no sir, you do what you're
Yeah.
told, and that is what you do. Do you think that
Yeah.
that message is still relevant today? And even to piggyback on what Josh said, then do we also ignore color? Is ignoring color even a possibility?
Well, to the latter question you asked, no, there's no possibility that you can't not
Right.
see color. There are all these, I don't see color. I don't see you as a black person. That doesn't work, because if you're not seeing the color, then you're not seeing me. Because with my color comes what Jacques just said, a whole culture that you might not know about,
Yeah.
that you should be opening to know about.
Mm,
To your first question, I do believe that things are changing. I think the message is starting. I don't recall hearing anything like that at ASU when I was there. Um, Not for. I'm just saying. You heard that, but I'm just saying for me, I don't recall hearing that. But uh,
right. I mean, one of the commenters, Jamu,
yeah,
said that was not ASU, and we went to school together. So I don't know.
yeah, I know Ajamu. Yeah, I know
Right,
who he was. Went to
exactly.
school
So
with. Yeah.
Ajamu, you must didn't take the same humanities through the African experience class that I did, but we're okay.
Yeah, well, no. Let me just say this. I think that more people are starting to speak up because they know things are wrong. There was a time in this country where black folks were told, "Listen, you don't talk to the white man. You don't do such and such to the white man. You don't do."
Hmm.
And as time went on and time went forward and things evolved, black folks started speaking up and feeling more stronger and more emboldened and more empowered. You know what? I'm not going to take this second class citizen stuff anymore. I'm going to speak my mind. And sadly, a lot of us had to pay the ultimate price for it,
Mm,
and still are today. Black folks were speaking up to police and to authority. They feel that when they're being mistreated, and it's sadly still having deadly consequences. And so I think that for a lot of folks and a lot of younger people, I have some friends of mine who are same age as me, a little younger, and they're parenting a little differently than probably how we were.
mm-hmm.
And I'm actually kind of surprised that some of the stuff that should still be in place is kind of chipping away a little bit.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that people should speak their minds. I think that young people should definitely speak their minds. I went to this rally and protest today, and I'm glad that I went before this because I saw a lot of stuff that I hadn't seen in a while. Here in New York City, when it comes to activism and what's been going on here. George Floyd happened all the way in Minneapolis, and it just caused a ripple effect all around the world. And people are really starting to wake up to some of the ills that are going on. And what's interesting is people that at one point in time felt they had nothing to do with the problems of black people are now starting to make it their problem because
Mm-hmm.
they know someone. As someone said, we're more connected now. We're going to integrated schools more. We're working by each other more. Some of us are even going to the same churches, as white folks. Black
Right.
folks going to church together.
Yeah.
There was a point in time where black people and white people didn't go to church together. Now we are.
Hmm.
And so taking on those problems and understanding what it means to be black in this country, people are starting to believe it. Because people would hear like, oh, it's not that hard. You just go through a few things. But now people are starting to really understand and believe that we have to move differently every single day, from the time we get up, from the time we go to bed, to even things we see on television, how we even interact on the internet, on social media. We have to move differently. And,
Yeah.
and
I love that.
yeah, it's the truth. We have to move
Right.
differently.
Right.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, so Dr. Mitchell, you and I, we're very close in age, and probably heard some of the same stories and preachings and teachings from Big Mama, um,
But Big
from
Mom.
Big Mama
Yeah.
about what's right to do and what's wrong to do. Actually, somebody says Alfonso says, let me scroll down. No, that's not it. He says, "You're right, Wesley. My sons and his friends no longer value the yes, sir, no, sir, or yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Yes, Gen Xers were taught this, especially growing up in the Haitian and African culture. So I think that that is. I mean, Jacques can probably speak to that in terms of like the idea that respect is given to whether people in authority, also not just people in authority, but elders and different stuff of that nature. So, what are you seeing, Dr. Mitchell, in terms of are you think do you think that this message still needs to be taught and that part of the problem, I shouldn't say part of the problem, but that the difficulty is that not teaching this, so what some people may say, go along to get along, is kind of
Yeah.
like what
Mm-hmm.
we are dealing with now today, because these young people and even old people are absolutely not going for the okey doke. Absolutely not.
Right. Well, let me start off, Wesley, by saying, Dr. Willis, by saying that we are close in age and have a lived experience that kind of mirrors each other in terms of upbringing. And so, um, yes, I remember the yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and yes, sir, and no, sir. But I'll take that one step further. I live in the South, and I now live in the South. And I also say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and yes, sir, and no, sir to people of color.
Hmm.
And so it's not just a matter of the respect itself in those spaces in terms of getting back safely. It is a part of the culture, right? But going back into the lesson that I'm okay with, let me say that I'm okay with, and
Hmm.
I do
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
Um, so coming back though to the space of making it home safely,
Mm.
um, I tell my students that they need to pay attention to their environment.
Hmm.
And so if it is a space where, if you're being told something that's inappropriate, you're by yourself and you're outnumbered, you need to get home safely.
Hmm.
And I would rather that you come find the elders to fight for you and on your behalf than you to have a standoff with a hot headed cop or in a situation where someone has power and control and a gun that they don't know how to use
Mm.
in that space and that environment. I don't think for me it's a matter of lacking any degree of appreciation for standing up for what you believe in. But I've also been taught that every fight is not your fight to take on.
Mm.
And so for young,
Mm.
for young black men especially, young black women in spaces where you might be deserted street, small, you need to get home safely, and then you need to call an adult.
Mm.
You call your uncle. My nephews know you can call. You got my cell. You call me in the middle of the night if you need to, because I'm gonna come to that spot to get you. But the elders need to fight that fight because I think they're more inclined to take a chance with you, and I don't want you to be the next statistic. So it's relevant in that regard because I think we need to teach our young kings and queens that they need to live until they can control the kingdom and the queendom. They need to make it to that spot.
Mm.
I believe that there are people that are becoming more cognizant of that space. I believe that white people are jumping in saying, "Hey, that's not right." I've seen a lot of that driving through the community as well. People see it, right is right and wrong is not right, and
I
people know
like
when
that.
it's right. But I think the other piece of that is I live in a world where, as one parent said to me once, we taught our child to fear no one.
Mm.
She was having this conversation. Her daughter had told me what she was, and what she wasn't gonna do. And I told her she could go home, right?
Right.
So Mama wanted to have a conversation. I said, I don't come to work to fight. I do this work and I find sacred space in preparing the next generation of leaders of color. So I don't come here to fight. But what I'll tell you is I believe that I'm entitled to something in terms of respect. The
Hmm.
mother told me we teach our children not to fear anyone. I said, well, that's good, but I'm also in the Bible Belt, and the Bible says fear is the beginning of wisdom. So at the end of that, I don't want to raise fearful young people. but I want you to find someone who advocates for you. Because I got a little bit more boom in my attitude than a 17-year-old. But I would like to think, and I have gotten out of a
Mhm.
police situation before, that I said to myself, Lord, if I wasn't who I am now, I could have ended up with a bullet in me,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think you pay attention to your space. I think we need to teach our young cheetah cubs to be observant of the space that they're in.
Mhm.
I think that when if it's questionable, I don't want you mouthing off at a police officer or an elder. I want you to come get an adult. You need to come get an elder.
Mm.
Mhm.
And
Interesting. Go ahead.
as we are the elders. And
Right.
so, having been pulled over before, being a teenager, having been pulled over as a young adult, having filed a complaint against the highway patrol for an officer, white female, who pulled a gun on me on the side of Highway 40,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and riding that complaint all the way out. You know what I'm saying? I'm still going to come to advocate for you, but I need you to come home safe.
Right, right. And you know, it's interesting that you say that. At I mean, they're so varied, but one of the most profound experiences was driving between Wichita, Kansas, and Little Rock, Arkansas, to visit my dad, who was living in Wichita, Kansas, at a very late time of night. And I'm not gonna lie to you,
Yeah.
everything inside of me said, Wesley, do not get on this road. It's 12 o'clock at night. Not just one, between two very, just again, very rural areas with deers running
Right.
across the street, because that's what you deal with in
Right.
the South.
Right.
But what
Yeah.
do I deal? How do I deal with it? I have a New York license, and I can put on the
Mhm.
best of Southern twangs. Trust me,
Yes,
uh,
sir.
when necessary. And just that happened. I got pulled over by a policeman in a very dark area between Little Rock, Arkansas, and Wichita, Kansas. He made me get out of my car and get into his car, explain where it is I was going. He was like, "You sound Southern, but you have a New York driver's license and a New York City address." And I was very kind of like, I literally spilled my whole entire life to this man just so that I could, again, get to where I needed to go. Um, I
Right.
want to punt this because one thing you said, Dr. Grant. So Alfonso says, how do we continue to have these conversations with our young sons? I have had the talk. After this, what can I say to my now 17-year-old, 6'4", 310-pound offensive lineman son? What do I say to him
Right.
now? He says, why is this still
Mm-hmm.
happening?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Ugh,
that's a very tough question. But
yes.
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
saying is that it's just like Dr. Mitchell has said. You want them to come home safe. You want them to to still be alive at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And granted, I think the most important thing is for them to take a deep breath, and choose their words carefully, instead of just spontaneously responding. We teach children to respect authority, and
Yeah.
obviously a police officer is someone who is viewed in authority just like a minister would be, or a teacher would be, or an older adult would be. The
Indeed.
thing that we have to realize, though, is that look at the particular situation where you're at, and that person at the end of the day still has the upper hand over you, and how you
Yeah.
choose to tackle that battle may determine whether or not you're going to have a good outcome or a bad outcome.
I get that.
And that's why it's
Mhm.
important for them to
I
take a
get that.
deep breath and choose their words carefully.
Right. But the thing is, you're here to help me. Like, as a nurse, I don't have to be told, like, yes, ma'am. And then, of course, I have, I have the power. I could make, the decision to do something, that would harm my patient. But my patient says, you're here to help me at the end of the day. You're not here to
Mhm.
hurt me. And it just seems so still so
Yeah.
counterintuitive to what
Yeah.
what these people are assigned to, like their life duty, because it's not
Right.
easy being a nurse, it's not easy being a police officer, it's not
No,
easy
it
being
is
a
not.
teacher, you know.
This is
So
true. You channel that energy, somewhere else. I mean, I'll admit I
Yeah.
have taken care of people that I knew who were white supremacists, and
mhm,
for your audience, my background was burns and critical care, and you're dealing with a situation where people are in a lot of pain and suffering, and yes, there were people who would uh, you know either try to make it seem like that you were their servant, or that or they didn't want you to take care of them, didn't
mhm,
want you to put hands
mhm,
on them, and etc. And you just handle each situation differently. But
Yeah.
the thing is, your I had colleagues who would stand up for me and say, hey, he's the best here.
mhm,
You're missing out, so to speak. And it wasn't, and these were people of all all ethnicities who would do that. But the bottom line is that you still treated that person with respect because of
Yeah.
the fact that they needed your care, and just hope and pray that somewhere down the line, maybe an action that you did may have caused them to to think differently, about the next time they encountered a black person or a person from another ethnicity because of that one experience that they had with you.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. Got you. And so, Jacques, I'm going to throw this to you because, again, you're educating these kids, and I see your Instagram timeline when the kids get like your cell phone and different stuff of that nature. How do you incorporate that into your pedagogy, one, as a teacher of color? Because I'm sure you have male students of color who come to you, and, need and deserve some type of direction. But two, so I'm gonna make this even a little bit more complex, is because honestly, I am here sitting in this chair, experiencing would I, because I don't have kids, but that is definitely the goal. But I have a niece and a nephew. How do I tell my nephew, to be able to do these things, but at the same time have hope, be happy, and know that something is going to change when it hasn't changed for so many years.
And it's just not your nephew. We also have to talk about your niece too. We have to, like,
Yes, I
well,
agree.
well,
I
let's
apologize.
not forget Breonna Taylor.
Right.
Um, I think I think what is I think first and foremost, I'm gonna go back to um, what was said, I think, by Dr. Kenneth, in regards to this respect. I think a lot of times this whole idea of I don't fear anyone, that is detrimental. I think I have benefited from having some fear of my parents. And I can always tell the kids who do not fear their parents.
Hmm.
Don't fear
Okay?
their
Because they
parents.
do,
That's right. That's right.
because if they don't fear their parents, then they will not have respect for me. And when I'm talking about a fear, a healthy fear, I think that we should not fear the police. I think we should respect the police. But I think what happens is a lot of policemen try to force that respect through intimidation and fear.
Mm,
Um,
mm, mm,
and I think it's having to have conversations with my students. We're talking about a community that is heavily policed,
mhm,
and
mhm,
therefore having to have conversations with them about just using your coping skills. Like, this does not have to be, every interaction does not have to be a bad interaction with an authority figure.
mm,
You can
Yes.
talk to me and we can figure out. I can give you the space to tell me I'm upset because, before you start cursing me out and calling me every name in the book. So I think it's
That's right.
about having that conversation, being able to say, well, and but it also is the responsibility of the person who is providing care, whether you're a teacher, a police officer, a nurse, to be able to look at somebody and say, "Did you eat today? Are you
Mm,
irritated with me because did you eat?" Or even if it's a police officer pulling over, "I know you're upset that I pull you over, but first and foremost, hey, how are you? And this is why I pulled you over." Like, being able to have those kind of conversations and to realize that you are dealing with a whole entire person, like being holistic.
mm-hmm.
And I think it's clear that a lot of police departments are struggling with being holistic, you
Right,
know?
right, right. And so I'm going to punt to you, Josh. Again,
Hmm.
same question. How do you have this conversation with, again, your son, who is, basically by all means not, not somebody
Hmm.
who, not somebody who you can look past, and can be
Yeah.
very, what some people would consider very intimidating, being a son of color.
Hmm.
How do you have that
Yeah.
conversation with them in 2020 and still provide them with some level of hope? I'll also give some attention to, while you present. So Ajamu says, while you present yourself giving respect, greeting, you are also saying to a stranger that I respect you, so now you should respect me. That's interesting. So,
Hmm.
so go ahead, Josh. I
Sure.
would love to hear, especially while you probably like, oh, I'm not an educator. Your paper educates so many people,
Thank
and
you.
is
Yeah.
and so many people that I know in Harlem, where you all
Hmm.
are based, read the
Hmm.
paper, and it is a cornerstone of the information that they get.
Yeah.
And when they read it, they say to their grandsons or to their sons who don't read papers nowadays, you know, this
Well, we
is
have a website too, so that works.
yes.
That's part of my job. But yeah, so I'm reaching them online. That's cool.
Right. How are you reaching them? How are you training them? How are you educating them and still providing hope? And this is being 2020. Because part of me is
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
frustrated with that I even have to do it. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's so sad that even in 2020 that conversation needs to be had, and it does. We need to have
Yeah.
it with our sons and daughters. Well, first of all, it has to be a very honest conversation. A lot of us grew up hearing about stories from our grandparents and parents. I mean, my mother told me the story about how she integrated her high school back in the late 1960s,
Right.
and all the stuff that she went through. My father told me about the times he's from New York City, was from New York City, and had to ride the train down to Virginia to see family. But as soon as he got to Washington D.C., he had to sit in the back of the train because segregation laws came in. So having a very honest conversation of what is going on is key. You mentioned the publication. I do want to say we do. I can honestly say we do a good job of constantly reminding our readers about their rights and what to do in certain situations.
I
So
noticed.
whenever
Right.
at time possible, we definitely try to do that. We give the tips. We give the steps on what to do when you're pulled over by the police. We're constantly talking to activists, constantly talking to folks like Jacques and Dr. Kenneth, experts that can tell us how we convey that message. But it has to be a very honest and open conversation. But there also needs to be positives told. We need to tell the story about the positive things that are
Yeah.
going on. We have to recognize and
Hmm.
say, hey, you know what? This is going on right now, but let me show you someone who's trying to make change about it. This is the politician
Yeah.
who's out there making change. Follow that person on social media. This is the activist
That's right.
that's out there right now doing,
Hmm.
trying to make change about this. Let's watch these YouTube videos about their speeches. Find the
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
positives.
Mm.
We have you don't the story about the African American experience isn't a negative story. There are negative aspects
Hmm.
about it that need to be honestly told, but there are positive ones too that can
That's
strengthen
true.
us. Stories of
Yeah.
perseverance that can strengthen us and show us what we need to do next. We've been through this. We've been going
Yeah.
through this for such a long time. But the fact of the matter is, there are people out there in positions. I didn't know today that the mayor of Tacoma, Washington, was a black woman. I didn't know that.
Right.
I didn't know that until I saw her on the
Hmm.
news today about the situation. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there was a black man who was killed by police out there. I can't remember his name right now. But then they went to her, and I'm like, well, I didn't even know that.
Mhm.
And those are the type of people that now I'm going to follow her and see what she's
Hmm.
doing because she's in a position to make change.
Mhm.
She's in a position to make things possible and bring about change. So I think again, being very honest, but also look, we cannot forget the positives. We have to recognize those people, the actions that are being done out there to try and make things better.
You know
Because we
what?
didn't always have that.
Mhm.
We didn't always have that.
No, but you know what? Now I'm gonna punt this to the coach, because coach me. We just had the 8 years of, oh, what happened? we just
Uh
had
oh.
8 years of a black president, and didn't
Right,
we
right.
make it? Now I have still have to go back to this part where I tell my son that we are not future presidents of the United States, and that we are not like what my grandmother said. My grandmother always taught me, Wesley, you are better than the best, and just you are better than the best, and you're just as good as everybody else. So that's a message that my grandmother just put in me. She instilled in me. She instilled in me,
Mm-hmm.
and then while she was on this planet, she saw President Obama. Didn't we make it? Didn't aren't we do? Why do
Mm-hmm.
we? Why do I have on 2020 this man who says, "How do I teach my 17-year-old 6'4", 310 pound that he need to be docile in some ways?"
Mm-hmm.
And let me say this: it's not about being docile. It
Right.
really is about getting
I,
home safe,
you,
right?
I'm being
I
Mhm.
incitive. I'm inciting. Okay.
Right, right, right. Okay. Because I think that whole walk away from fights you can't win,
Mm.
and especially when we start talking about black masculinity,
Oh, well,
becomes this
that's a whole other
whole
conversation.
now that's a whole nother conversation. So hear me when
Mhm.
I say I would rather that, like I said, I'd rather that you come get the elders. Let me fight for you, right?
Hmm.
So that his son makes it home. Let me go back to the Obama story and Obama being a president for 8 years. I'm so glad you went to that because I posted. Uh, now I got people texting me in the middle of this conversation. I posted last week something about this big challenge that would where someone may well, and I'll just call it out. Cornell West said that the things that we're experiencing now were because of the Obama administration and the things he did not do. And I said to myself, we had 8 years of a leader who was a man of color, impeccable service as a president, and we still blaming stuff on what's going on right now. We're still trying to blame that on someone who's not in office, who's trying to enjoy raising his daughters and not being sitting at the seat of power in Washington. I think how we respond to that whole thing about having a black president for 8 years goes back to something Jack said earlier, and that is there's some value in instruction, if you will, in that space. We speak about where we are now after having served or having had a black man serve in the Oval Office, by also telling our young people this is what happens also when people don't come out to vote. This is what happens when
Mm.
we're not a part of the process. Good, bad, or indifferent. And Jock said it earlier when he said it's a system, but it's the system itself that has some problems. But it still is the political system,
Mhm.
right? And that's how it works. And they're already mounting campaigns that are saying, well, if this doesn't happen, I'm not going to vote. And I'm saying to myself, in the communities that look like you, the people that are saying that, in the communities that look like you need to be encouraging everybody to go vote, right?
Body to vote. Mhm.
I think there's instructional value in this space of we had this for 8 years and this is where we are, by saying this is the system that exists, this is how it operates, right? Not only is it about voting at the national level, it's about voting down ballot. All politics is local. It's about who you putting in judgeships. I supported a local judge here in Durham in terms of her campaign. I've seen her work tirelessly to serve the needs of mental health, the mental health court, as well as abuse, neglect, and dependency court here in Durham. It's about making sure that we are volunteering in spaces. Get on the school board. Volunteer as a guardian item at the court. Volunteer at the school where your son and your daughter is going to school. Do something that puts you in or connected to the power base, because this has happened, I believe, because as we've gotten a little bit more accomplished and we feel better about who we are because we had a black president, we became apathetic and
Mm.
we began to
Yeah.
segregate the village. And we segregated the village over those who were worthy and those who weren't. We began to prioritize pain, and we as a black people became very divided. What we have right now, some of this is we needed to be a little bit more intentional about the systems that serve us, whether they be perfect or good or whatnot. We still need to be intentional, and we need to play a part in decisions. We need to play a part in the allocation of funding, and we need to be pushing our representatives and our elected officials to create
Right.
reform and to create
Mhm.
laws. We need to follow the money trail.
Mm.
Follow
Follow
the
the
money
money
Yeah.
trail.
trail.
Wesley.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that's my
Wesley.
favorite quote.
Good.
It's Grant season, Dr. Willis. You got to follow the money
Yes, Dr. Grant.
I just wanted to add to what Dr. Mitchell has stated, in talking about the Obama administration. Keep in mind that the moment he was elected, then it started as we're going to make sure that he's a one-term president. And then when he was elected
Yeah,
again, he also had he didn't have people that could pass his agenda. He had a Republican
yeah,
Senate and a majority Republican House for the first 2 years of his second term. So this goes back to what I had stated earlier, in that we need to hold ourselves responsible and accountable. In other
that's right.
words, we as a people should have been contacting our elected officials and saying, work with the president, not work against him, or instead of just becoming
That's right.
complacent and making it seem like, oh, that's just the way it is. The way it is because politicians will if they begin to hear enough from one side or whatever else, they're going to begin to open up their ears, because their ultimate goal is they want to be reelected again. And when you
Mhm.
have somebody
Yeah,
who says, I'm going to work against you because you're not supporting what you should be doing, instead of being in the pocket of big business or whatever else, then they need to know that yes, there are people out there who have other opinions that may be different from theirs.
yeah,
So it's sort of we should hold ourselves accountable for not working or attempting to work with the Obama administration, and contacting members of Congress and letting our voices be heard as well. So
Mhm.
that would be my answer to that particular comment.
Mm. So,
yeah,
Michael M.J. Jones says, as a clinical social worker and psychotherapist, he provides services to multiple clients of color experiencing trauma as a result of criminal justice system. What are your implicational perspectives in regards to how we can collectively find solutions to make an impact in our local communities and nationally, Dr. Grant?
I think probably again, it goes to going into the justice system, and making sure that there is a system in place to address those needs.
yeah,
Again, right now the public's answer for a lot of things is, you lock them up, throw away the key, or whatever
Mhm.
else. We don't
Mhm.
have anything that provides good, adequate rehabilitation, if it's in that sense, or like in the sense of the person who texted. What are the resources that are available that prevents someone from either becoming a repetitive individual, a criminal, or at least seen as going through a revolving door, if you will, within the criminal justice system, but giving them the resources that they need to be able to lift themselves up, so that they can, be able to have a different lifestyle,
Mhm.
or have at least just the bare minimum, if anything, instead of being punished for the fact that, yeah, you may have crime may have been committed, or whatever, and you get out, but then there's no resources available
Mhm.
for you to be able to try to change your situation. So offering them educational courses, or training, or something that would be able to put them on the other side of the track, so to speak.
Right, right. We got a lot of comments. My mother loves to get on my lives.
Your mother loves you.
My mother loves to get on my lives. Remember your situation when I worked in Clayton County, well, which was actually, Mom. It wasn't Clayton County. It was Clantown County. Yes, I do remember that. Jamu says he's really trying to listen. Elizabeth states, yes, Gen Xers was taught this, especially growing. Oh well, no, that was I said that earlier. She said that she's seen so many organizations and corporations say they stand behind Black Lives Matters. What's the action plan? Not a 10-minute, once a year cultural diversity competency. And that's for you, Jacques. I mean, I think is so appropriately so, considering especially when she says cultural competency, you held me to the fact,
Yeah.
that I didn't say, say her name. My niece is very much, a target. Black women are also, a result of this. Another part of that is I noticed that your timeline is very dedicated to recognizing that Black Lives Matter should be very inclusive of cis, trans women, LGBTQ. So we part out and we parse all of these things. I would be like to know, what is the answer? Because cultural competency is now all of these things that you want.
Yeah, because we have to understand that when we say Black Lives Matter, it's all Black lives. And that is sometimes very difficult for some people because they're like, well, I'm a cis heterosexual man and I don't really, you know, like gay people. I don't really like trans people, but they're still black, and an attack against them is an attack against all of us. We are not free until we are all free.
Mm,
So I think that is something that is powerful about Black Lives Matter, is really pushing that it is for all Black lives, and that's tough. But we're one. We are a family, and we have to really push. So not only do we have to shame white people, but we also have to shame people within our own community to say like, what you're doing
mm,
is
mhm,
it's not right, and it's
mhm,
Right.
actually watering down the message.
mhm.
You know.
Right. And that's so something what I wanted to go, even though we only have a few minutes left. What happens in our house, we I don't know for y'all, but Big Mama always told me what happens in our house stays in our house. We deal with our own
Stay in the
family.
house.
So how do
That's
you
right.
part out all of these things and still keep the movement going? And I would love to hear that from you, Josh.
Mhm. Can you repeat the question one more time? I'm not really checking what the
So
question is.
so Jacques talked
There's a
about
lot
the
of layers to that. I
importance
just
that
want to get one by one. Tell me again.
so Jacques brought out the point that all Black lives matter, and that should be something that's brought to the
Yes.
forefront of the way we think. Cis men, trans women, LGBTQ, that all Black lives matter, and that cultural competency surrounds being knowledgeable and respective of all of those things, but in a sense that
Hmm.
it's still like not just white shaming, but Black shaming because we do it in our own community. The message really
Hmm.
being, my big mama always said, what goes on in our house, we take care of in our house. You don't take it out to the streets.
Exactly.
How
Yeah.
do you keep this
Well, one
movement
of the things.
going,
Yeah.
knowing all of this stuff?
Hmm. Yeah. So one of the things that I constantly have to battle with telling our story that I get from a lot of different people is, well, y'all cover the white police officers killing the black people, but what about
Mm.
the black crime going on in the community? So it's kind of
Wow.
a similar situation, and I'm kind of
Mhm.
like,
But
one of the things I always say on my radio show whenever someone calls in with that question is, we're very good at uh, walking and chewing gum at the same time, so we don't need someone from the outside telling us,
I like
how to
that.
keep things in
Walking and
order
chewing
inside.
gum at the same
I
time.
get that question all the time on the radio and on email messages from me. The people email me all the time talking about, well, what about the stuff that's going on within the black community? And I always just kindly tell them, I say, we're very good at walking and chewing gum at the same time. We can take care of both problems and still fight for ourselves. But and that speaks to what I mean here with all that is that we can take care of problems from within. We do need to be educated on a lot of the issues that are happening within our community. Violence, for example, that's happening in our neighborhoods. One of the things about this time of year, I always have to deal with our shootings that happen in our community. So we're dealing with the shootings within from our neighborhoods, and then we're
yeah,
also dealing with the problems that we're having from the police. And the fact of the matter is, we're able to take care of both problems at the same time. And that's what
Mm.
I try to get across to people is that we're very good at multitasking. I think we've been
yeah,
doing it for the past 400 years on all fronts, and I think we can still do it.
Right, right. And Dr. Mitchell, Big Mama said.
um, Big Mama said.
Big Mama said.
I Big Mama said it. I think one of the things that I see is, and I kind of am piggybacking a little bit off of Josh, is the but. That it is easy for us to say this is important, but what about this? Like there's something's missing without us. I go back to that prioritizing pain, right?
Mm,
So Black Lives Matter, but Black Lives matter when all lives matter for us, right? But as Josh said, we don't need you to tell us that we're still working on some of those individual pieces. I think I had a conference when I had a conversation yesterday, and it was about how in the Black community we become very segmented in a lot of ways. In terms of the village, we go on talking about it takes a village, blah 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 blah. But we create little pockets of worthiness inside the village, right? So and so's doing real good, but they used to be this, or so and so used to that. I think as a whole, we've got to come back into this way of thinking where we love all members of the community unconditionally, and that we take back this delimiting your experience, where there's something about who you are that we want to highlight and amplify in a way that says, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but you're gay. Black Lives Matter, but you're trans, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That at the end of the day, everybody that looks like me is going to be black before we open our mouth or before we open our bedroom door, right? So at the end of the day, that how we engage in the greater good of society, right? Still carries this hue, this melanin that makes the rest of the world or mainstream community not give value to our contribution. And
Mm,
we've got to value all of the individual contributions inside the village if we want to make sure that we can have a united front that says to everybody else that all Black Lives Matter. But that starts, I agree with you, that's something we can handle, and something
right,
that we need to
right.
be responsible for. We need to be accountable. We're calling it out when we see it, right? You can't preach love on Sunday, but then say, but you still going to hell,
You
or
know what? I'm
you ain't
turning
worthy.
this off because you don't you start no fight up in here.
Oh, was I starting a fight? I was just answering your question, Dr. Willis. But and about and we create this taxonomy of of good and bad, right?
Hmm.
And we create these rungs, if you will. That whole caste system that somebody called in and said something about, and that's how we get to this whole how we make sure that we amplify all the individual components of Black Lives Matter. I think we need to say that Black Lives Matter, and I think we need to not dilute that message. And a part
Hmm.
of saying that Black Lives Matter means that every Black life matters without us segmenting it even further.
Hmm. Well, you know what? When you said something about parsing it out in good and bad, Ajamu says, "I'm listening to four educated guests on this call. Not one of you have spoken towards black people doing incorrect and unlawful things. Should black people not abiding by the local laws not be shunned? What do you think about? So this is what I think. I think that as a fellow frustrated African American person of color, I get it. Like, I cannot have any more letters after my name and articulate the experiences that I'm having any better than anybody else I know, but continuously feel frustrated. So much so that I need to get attention. I need something feel. I need to feel satisfied in some ways. So the question is, should black people not abiding by the local laws be not be shunned? Dr. Grant.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question, Dr.
Go ahead.
Wheeler? is
Mhm.
does this mean like black people that are, is this rioting and looting, or is this
Yes, this
what in
basically
what
this person is
context
saying
are?
that black people who are rioting and looting, should they not be shunned?
Okay, so it's I
Well, let me start with
I pers I'm sorry.
No, I think
I
so.
personally
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, I saw. So I said I added my own point in. So my answer to
Mhm.
Jamu was, I personally, I don't think they should be shunned. I will say that luckily, it's luckily for, I guess, the law, I am in a situation where doing unlawful acts is definitely more of a loss than anything that I could possibly gain. Uh, but if I was like, say for instance, God forgive me, my brother, my mother's probably gonna act out, where
uh-oh.
I don't have much to lose, where I've had a criminal record and I don't have much hope of anything changing. I don't honestly give a shit. I'm burning it down. But in my situation, I'm a doctor. I have a PhD. I have a practice and I have patience and I have to be thoughtful. And here I have a Jamu saying people should be shunned. So my question is, Jamu, for Dr.
But it
Grant is,
mm,
should we be shunning black people who choose to not abide by local laws?
That's a that's a very tough question
I get it.
it
Trust
to
is.
me.
answer for me, uh, mainly because uh, I guess it boils down to it's the way of getting attention, as you said, when when you're tired of hitting your head up against the wall to try to get attention. This is what it takes. I don't agree with that. So I guess I would probably be on the side of perhaps that they should be shunned. But my thought is that obviously it needs that we or means that we need to have some further dialogue to try to figure out what is the crux of this, and that is, for lack of a better term, the acting out, if you will, in
Mhm.
order to get the attention that you need. But the downside, obviously, is look at the destruction that is caused to the hurt to the community, or the store owner, or the restaurant owner, or or things
Right,
of that sort. Those things can be
right.
rebuilt, but in some cases, some of the rioting and stuff that has happened, businesses are going to have to close down permanently. So the community is going to suffer as a result of that as well,
Mhm.
of that
But we
loss. I
also
mean.
have we
Josh?
I,
also have to realize that the child who's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth.
right.
So
Hmm.
there's a deeper thing that is going on, is that we people have been saying for the longest time, hey, we have an issue, but it is not until that there is rioting and looting and a loss of property that people all of a sudden pay attention. This is a revolt. This is a modern day, even though we are no longer enslaved, this is a slave revolt. People are making it very clear that
Mm,
the system that is in place right now no longer serves me. And you know what? To hell with it.
mhm.
Burn it down. And we're not burning down our own communities. I live in Atlanta. My community is untouched. We are burning down and we are looting the Gucci's and the Pradas and the things that we don't have access to, and we are trying to send the message and making it very clear.
Mm. Okay.
I, I,
So
I
Let me
want to
just say,
jump in this too, Dr.
I just
Willis,
have to
if I'm not.
say,
Oh,
I,
go ahead, Josh.
yeah, I'm just gonna say
great.
this. I two things I want to say. I said it on my podcast earlier this week that we do at the Amsterdam News, and I said that a lot of our young people in this city and around the country are having constant interactions with the police, and they don't have to. They're constantly being harassed by the police. They don't have to be. And when it happens enough times, I mean, people were seeing this as an opportunity to be able to get revenge because they've been harassed so much. Do I condone it? No, I don't condone violence. I don't condone rioting. I don't condone looting. However, I do understand it. I do think that people have enough is enough for a lot of people. They've reached their boiling point. When they've
Yeah.
had that opportunity to be able to get revenge on the system, as Jock said, they're going to take it. Now, I live in a community where we did experience looting. We did experience damage to to some of our businesses. Some of them minority-owned businesses. Whether or not they're black businesses, a lot of them were Latino-owned businesses. I don't know exactly if there were any black ones, but I did see it. It wasn't needed. In the case of here in the Bronx, that when it happened up here, there were situations where there was no protest at all. There was just a crime of opportunity. People broke into. There was one of the pharmacies that was minority owned that they broke into and they stole all the drugs. Wrong thing to do. There was a situation where there was a computer store and right around the corner from me that was broken into. All the equipment, everything gone. Terrible thing. Should we shun those people? No. Should we? Should they? You know, Obviously something needs to happen, and then there's a consequence for that because you can't steal and do wrong things. So there should definitely be some kind of a consequence. But what we should do is embrace those people after they've paid their debt to society so that they don't do it again, and also kind of figure out the reason why it happened. So there needs to be. So I agree with what Jock just said about what did we do wrong? Where did we go wrong as a community to allow that for people to act to have young people act that way? Where did we go wrong? What did we do? And so, but there's still time to make it right. And but I understand it. I say that all the time. Some young people have reached their boiling point. I mean, there are people who are just out on the streets, hanging out, having a good time, and the police will ask them, "What's going on? Get in your house. Be quiet."
Mm.
And when that happens enough times, that can take a toll on somebody.
Right.
When you're
Right.
literally being told by law enforcement or by somebody in authority that you're nothing, that you're less than nothing, and having to go through that. So, well, again, I don't condone it, but I understand why.
Right.
That's all I want
Right.
to say.
Wow.
On that.
Well, so we're coming up.
Dr. Willis.
You're gonna be the
Dr. Willis.
yes,
I wanted to jump in on just real quickly on that whole thing about
because you're finishing it up.
shunning.
So you're the end note.
Is that it? Well, I just got through talking about prioritizing pain, right? And how we segment worthiness in the village. I'm going to say that while it is never what my response would be in a local community as an individual, because what the person that wrote in said, all of us are here, and I think he said something about educated black men. We've said nothing about that. That's another situation where are we able to pass judgment on how somebody else has expressed pain, right? We've all
Right.
been triggered. We talked about that earlier. I've talked with my team about that. We've all been triggered. You can't be a person of color in this experience and not be triggered if you've been pulled over, if you've been mistreated, if you felt discrimination. You are being triggered. But everybody's connection in the village in terms of how they respond is different.
Right.
Everybody on this call are either the educators, the healers, or the journalists, the scribes, right? So our places in the village require us to do something different in terms of responding to the pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my real quick answer would be no, they should not be shunned. Why? That's not my response to how I'm going to respond to my trigger, but I respond to them as well, right? It weighs on all of us in a lot of different ways in terms of how it manifests in our day to day. It weighs on the people that are looting and rioting in a different way, and that's the response. I'll go back and I agree with Josh in that we should be trying to figure out. Our job really is to heal, is to help you recalibrate yourself after this experience, right? And try to get kids back situated, families connected and organized. Josh is documenting it in terms of what the next story is going to be and asking political leaders what's going to be next. Our role in this experience is different, but I'm not going to say, because I just said we shouldn't be prioritizing the situation or segmenting each other in the village, and I'm going to say no, that they should not. But I again say it, that's not my response. That's not how what I would do in terms of appropriate response. But no,
I
we don't
love.
need to we don't need to
Right.
cast any more hurt on our own.
Right. I think that answer was so right on point is recognizing that we all on this call, like you said, pointing out he sees for educated men, we all have roles in the village and roles in our community to play, from teachers, nurses, doctors, news reporters, leaders of very large organizations. We have roles to play, and that
Right.
shunning is definitely not going to be useful. My so the
Yeah.
ending
At
question,
all.
the ending is, how do we? What's the resolution? What are the demands, Jock?
I think we have to just make sure that everybody here on this call is held accountable. I'm a teacher. There are people that I report to. I am held accountable by my students, first and foremost, their families, and I'm held accountable by school leaders at my place of at my school. The nurses are held accountable by people. Who is holding police officers accountable? And if the public is saying we take issue, why are people not listening and making that happening? So there's a conversation that needs to that needs to happen, and we have to really look at reform.
All right. What's the doc? Finish this us out, Dr. Grant. What's the resolution? What are the demands? How do we end this, if we could end this in the streets, the protest tomorrow? Or is there an easy answer?
Well, I would I don't think there is an easy answer, but I would agree with what Jacques has said, in that we do need to hold ourselves and our elected officials accountable. But we need to first sit down and have some dialogue to figure out what it is that we need to, to fully work on. And so I think that's just the beginning, and we'll go from there.
Right, right. I think definitely what are we fully working on is a question
Mhm.
that's looming over my head too. And Dr. Mitchell?
I got a couple of things. I think I want police removed from public schools, with some type of disciplinary or security officer, like we used to have back in the day. But I don't want the sheriff and police officers in public ed. I think that there should be some type of comprehensive background check for police officers. In a lot of these situations, whoever the assailant is, whoever the perpetrator is, they've had complaints in other places, right? And I just say to myself, if you had X amount of complaints someplace else, like how did you make it on this force, right?
Mm, mm,
I think there needs to be some type of comprehensive clearance process where they're checking in terms of their ability to deal with stress, kind of like what we expect from Homeland and other members of the federal agencies. Um, I think that we in our local communities need to make sure that we are engaged in our local politics, that we're holding leaders accountable, we're holding our community accountable, but that people are in spaces. So volunteer on the school board, get on your police commission, go to city council meeting. Don't just go when you're mad. Go to have
mm.
a face, a voice, and to be a participant. So when these things and these questions and conversations come up, you are a full player in the decision making process, so that we can move to a stage where we can respond and not react, in terms of what's going on in our local community. And we have a say in how things are working, that we follow the money trail, but that
Right.
we certainly make sure that we repair the village.
Right. I love what you said. Don't just go when you mad. And you
Don't
are
go
the
when you're mad.
last respondent, Josh, to this question. What's the resolution? What's the demands? I know there's no easy
it
answer,
it's
but
so yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, Dr. Mitchell, I'm actually doing a story this week about police in the schools, so I'm so glad that you mentioned that. And I think that's something that definitely needs to change because there's been a lot of over policing. I think it's a shame that our children, their first interaction with law enforcement is happening at school first in a lot of cases,
Yep.
unfortunately, and that's
Yeah.
way too young to even be planting that seed of what law enforcement and what it's going to be like. I mean, there are actual jails in some of our schools, believe it or not, holding facilities
Mm,
in our schools here. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. But I do want to emphasize that I believe accountability is key here. But I do want to emphasize something that Dr. Mitchell did say, and that is holding our leaders accountable. There are so many people right now of all colors, all races, that are in political, they're in power
Yeah.
positions of power, politically in politics, who are making a lot of promises to us, who have made a lot of promises to us, and are not delivering. And we need specific reforms to police, and we need to be very transparent and open about what those reforms are going to look like. We need we need reforms in a lot of our social services here in New York City, especially that have not been working for many years, and we need to know what those changes are going to be so that we can level the playing field. So my solution here is holding our leaders accountable. That includes our mayors, our governors, our city council person, our politician, even the dog catcher if we need to hold those people
Right.
accountable to make sure that. No, I'm just saying, we got to
Right,
hold
from the
everybody,
top to the
anybody who has any
bottom.
type of position of
Hmm.
power, because
That's
right
right.
now,
That's
there are a
right.
lot of people who are just giving us, just talking to us about what they would like to see, and we need to see real action from people who are able to make those changes.
Right, right. I love that from the top to the bottom.
That's
Well,
all I'm gonna
gentlemen,
say.
we have been on for over an hour and 50 minutes, and this is like historic because I try to never go over 45 minutes. As a psychotherapist, everything should be max 45 minutes, and family therapy an hour. But the family needed to be convened today for this
Yes,
conversation.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And we're gonna and in the words of like my southern apostolic preacher, we're gonna sit here until we get it right. So I really appreciate you all for sitting with me and sitting with everybody
Yes, sir.
who's watching this, so we can start
That's
some
right.
like useful dialogue, continue useful dialogue
That's right.
for folks who look like us and those who don't even look like us, like our sisters
That's
and our mothers and our grandmothers and our daughters who aren't on this particular panel, because
Mhm.
we are all kind of in this together. So I thank you. I
Hmm.
really
Absolutely.
appreciate you.
All
You
right.
Thank you.
are loved, and I go and be well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.